The world was once filled with mysterious creatures. But how long ago? Did the great dinosaurs live and die tens of millions of years before man? Will we find our answers in science? What can the Bible tell us? In this series, we'll look to both science and the Bible to help bring dinosaurs back to life and to find answers to the questions they have left us. Uncovering the truth about dinosaurs. The hard truth. I'm Marcus Lloyd, and in this series, we're trying to shine some light on the controversy of whether dinosaurs evolved or were created, as the Bible teaches. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. The majesty of God's creation is everywhere. I mean, just take a look around. The evidence for a master designer, a creator, is right in front of our eyes. Some scientists try to understand how the world works, not just to get an increase in knowledge, but to know God better. The 16th century philosopher Sir Francis Bacon is often called the father of the scientific method, which is the search for knowledge through observation and experimentation. Now, he wrote that there are two books laid before us to prevent our falling into error. First, the volume of the scriptures, which reveal the will of God. Then the volume of the creatures, which express his power. Today, creation scientists have the same goal, to understand the unseen. And to do that, they use the scientific method.
Not only is the scientific method founded on biblical creation, but as a matter of historical fact, most of the founding fathers of science were Christians and, in fact, biblical creationists. In fact, the scientific method itself stems from Christian thinking. Bacon and others who expected to find patterns in the universe because there was a creator who'd imposed patterns on the universe.
In the scientific method, you're trying to explain some phenomenon in nature. And so what you do is you come up with a guess or a hypothesis to explain the phenomenon that you're observing, and then you deduce some logical consequences that ought to hold if your guess is right. And then you observe to see if those consequences are observed. If they're not, you either abandon the hypothesis or you go back and modify it, and then you repeat the process. And so in this iterative process, you hopefully are going to converge on the correct explanation for what you're observing.
To understand how God upholds the universe is to understand something about the mind of God. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Kepler, for example, said that doing astronomy was like thinking God's thoughts after him. And I think that's a wonderful sentiment. And so I would encourage anyone watching this who is wondering, can I really be a scientist and also embrace the Christian worldview? I would say in order to be consistent, you must. It's the Christian worldview that makes science possible.
Open my eyes, that I may see wondrous things from your law. Do secular scientists truly view the world with open eyes? What exactly do they believe? And how does it affect their perceptions? Evolutionary theory says our planet is billions of years old. Its hypothesis is that life evolves from simple organisms to complex forms over long periods. Single-cell organisms evolve into marine invertebrates that become fish, that become amphibians and reptiles and dinosaurs, then birds and mammals, and finally, humans.
You have to assume a starting point, and they assume great age. And so many of the methods are built in the assumption of millions and millions of years, and therefore they get millions and millions of years for an answer. But the ages themselves were not part of the rocks. The rocks themselves do not show either evolution or an age. That's all been inferred by the uniformitarian secular geologists who are trying to push God out of the picture.
Just as creation scientists approach science from a biblical standpoint, secular scientists believe that nature has the power to create. See, all of this, they say, everything around us came into being from some initial accident. Through repeated trial and error as nature gradually perfected the world around us. It's kind of a depressing thought. Evolutionists believe that we came into being by chance, we live without purpose, and we die without meaning. But if you take the Bible literally, you find hope, and you realize that God has a purpose for you. So which was it? Did we evolve, or was everything created?
The problem for evolutionists is that the fossils don't show evolution. If evolution were true, there ought to be thousands upon thousands of these transitional forms where one kind of animal is morphing into another kind, and we just don't see that. They have what they claim are a handful of transitional forms, but they can't even agree among themselves whether or not those are true intermediates between one kind of animal and another.
What we're finding more and more is, both in geology and in biology, we're finding that evolution does not provide a satisfactory explanation for the data that we see. It seems to me clear that we are not the product of evolution, and we have not been here for millions of years.
One characteristic of the fossil record of dinosaurs, which is nicely explained by the flood, is the abrupt appearance of communities. If we start low in the fossil record in the stack of rocks, and we work our way up looking for dinosaurs, let's say, we won't find them in the oldest rocks. There's a certain point, though, where we run into the dinosaurs for the first time. When we do, we don't just run into one type of dinosaur, we run into a variety of dinosaurs. But not just dinosaurs, we have the entire ecosystem, as if there was a whole living community of dinosaurs and the things that lived with them. That was apparently picked up and carried and dumped, again, spread across continents. And what you find when you look at that is we find the community suddenly appearing, the whole bunch of them, no transition from anything below them, no previous dinosaurs that look similar to it that might have given rise to them. And the sudden appearance of them can be explained in the fossil record by a flood.
Well, when it comes to using the fossils to date the sedimentary rock units, we have to keep in mind that there are two competing worldviews. One worldview, the secular evolutionary worldview, says that the fossil record, these sedimentary rock units, were laid down over hundreds of millions of years. Evolutionists, unfortunately, have to engage in what is called a tautology, or circular reasoning, saying that the layers of the sediments are dated by the fossils, but the fossils in turn are dated by the sediments that they're found in. This is circular reasoning.
Can the layers that we see today really have gotten there so quickly? Let's take a look back to a day in May 1980.
Well, in 1980, when Mount St. Helens erupted for the first time in recent years, geologists learned a lot. They actually had to go back and reassess things and go, well, wait a minute here. We thought it took thousands of years to get a few feet of sediment, and we're now seeing overnight, within a day or a week, we're seeing tens of feet of sediment being deposited. So Mount St. Helens really kind of changed the thinking of even the secular geologists, where now they recognize catastrophic events actually are the cause of much of the rock record we see. And that fits perfectly with the creation geologists who believe the global flood left most of the sediments we see, most of the fossils we see, exactly what we've been saying all along as catastrophists. The flood is that catastrophe that gives us that global record of all these animals, all simultaneously at the same time all around the world.
So when I am looking at the fossil record and I find evidences in the fossil record that seem to indicate rapid deposition, I can incorporate those into my model, and they fit very well. And a secular scientist would have to either discount them or ignore them or come up with some fanciful explanation to bring them in.
So Mount St. Helens showed that an enormous amount of geological work can be done in a very short time.
The slide is coming off of the west little.
And we also saw a lot of geological activity after the initial eruption. For instance, because of the debris and the mud from the initial eruption, you had this mud flow that carved out a miniature Grand Canyon within a single day. So based on the training that an evolutionist received, if you were to blindfold him, spin him around, and put him in that canyon, based on his uniformitarian assumptions, he would assume that canyon required many years to form, but instead it was formed in a single day. And so this is relevant because it shows us that you can get these layers to form very rapidly. You don't need millions of years.
Secular scientists tell us that birds are descendants of dinosaurs, but there are flaws with that theory. I'll let the experts explain.
Part of this evolutionary story asserts that dinosaurs evolved into birds. But there are indications in the fossils that this story doesn't add up. For example, we have fully formed birds found buried right alongside dinosaurs.
Well, when it comes to the supposed evolution of birds from dinosaurs, I'm always thinking about, for example, the heavy-tailed theropod dinosaurs that evolutionists say birds came from, evolving into the tiny bee hummingbird of Cuba, which can successfully make its nest in a hollowed-out golf ball. The bee hummingbird of Cuba, evolving from a heavy-tailed theropod dinosaur, I just can't buy it from a zoological perspective.
You know, dinosaurs are used more than just about any other topic to really inundate people with evolutionary thinking. And that's a shame, because when you understand the truth about dinosaurs, it confirms the biblical worldview. But evolutionists, what they do is they take these wonderful creatures that the Lord made for our enjoyment and for our fascination, and they attach a story to these things. And people often will swallow the story without thinking, wait a minute, is there really evidence for that story that dinosaurs lived millions of years ago and they had this nature and some of them turned into birds and so on? Well, no, that story should be rejected. It's not based in fact, it's not based in evidence. The Christian worldview can account for dinosaurs. We can make sense of that. We can make sense of the fact that they lived at the same time as people and so on. And it matters because people are being turned away from the Christian worldview because of these false ideas about dinosaurs. We can use the truth about dinosaurs to show people that the Bible really is true from the very beginning. Dinosaurs are a wonderful and exciting way to do that.
Another big issue with evolution is the problem of determining dates. Evolutionists believe dinosaurs to be millions of years old. But where did they come up with these dates? Many people seem to think that carbon dating establishes dinosaur ages, but actually it doesn't. Secular scientists do not use radiocarbon dating for dinosaur fossils, but radiocarbon dating does have its place.
Carbon dating is an age estimate technique typically used in archaeological samples. So like ancient bone or an ancient wooden axe, but you use bone or wood or charcoal or something where you had some kind of organic component. And because it only gives ages, supposedly, for the last several tens of thousands of years, we only use archaeological samples. So carbon dating, it does work in some contexts. It gives us accurate dates for the last 2,000 or 3,000 years. But that's where we can verify it with parallel dating techniques, like there's a buried coin, and we have a depiction of a king on the coin, and we can match the king's inscription or depiction with ancient records. And then when the carbon date for a piece of material in that same archaeological layer matches, then we say, the carbon date is working, carbon dating is working. But the older you get, the lower you get in these layers, the farther carbon dates veer off of actual calendar ages. Until the lowest layers, you're looking at calendar ages that completely mismatch the carbon dates.
So in theory, it seems to make sense. But the accuracy of all radioactive dating techniques are suspect. Everybody kind of goes along with it and they teach it as fact, but it's all based on assumptions that can't be verified.
Even though secular scientists do not use radiocarbon dating to establish dinosaur ages, creation researchers have discovered radiocarbon in dinosaur and other fossil creatures, indicating ages of thousands, not millions of years. If dinosaurs were around today, we could dissect one and see what's inside. Like mud and straw are mixed together to make bricks, hard and soft tissue are mixed together in bones. The hard part of the bone, the mud part of the brick, would likely be made of a highly organized form of calcium phosphate, like in a cow's bone, or like in our bones for that matter. The soft part, the straw part of the brick, would be mostly made of collagen, a long and tough protein. Bone cells, or osteocytes, manufacture both hard and soft parts of the bone. Fossils are often mineralized. These fossilized dinosaur bones are essentially rocks that used to be dinosaurs. In a secular view, they died millions of years ago. But here's the story of a lab accident and a broken T-Rex leg bone that gave up some amazing secrets.
Starting in 2005, the paleontological community was really rocked by a discovery made by Mary Schweitzer and her colleagues, who had been excavating a Tyrannosaurus rex fossil in Montana, in the Hell Creek Formation. When Schweitzer took the bones back to her lab in North Carolina, her assistant was dissolving some of the minerals away, but accidentally left it overnight. And when he came back, the bones were completely dissolved away. But instead of there being nothing left, which is what was expected, there were still some structures left inside that weren't mineral structures. They looked like the veins and the arteries of what was inside the bone. But that didn't seem to make any sense because the bone is supposed to be 70 million years, 68 million years old for the Tyrannosaurus rex, and yet it had these materials in it.
And it should have been all gone. It should be all turned into nitrogen. We also have proteins, original proteins from these animals.
A protein has a finite life. These proteins and DNA and other biomolecules that we were finding in these bones cannot possibly, by any methods that we can apply today, survive for millions of years.
So Schweitzer has faced a lot of criticism from that, but Schweitzer came back and went back to the lab. They used independent labs, 3 of them, and kept going after this and looking at everything. And what they discovered was not only in the T-Rex were there blood vessels and probable blood cells, but there were also cells that produced the bone itself.
So when we find these molecules, and they're being found more and more commonly associated with dinosaur bones and other kinds of fossil remains, this is an indication that the radiometric dating methods are not giving us actual time, they're giving us something else.
This is a great bit of evidence that points towards a young Earth, that these fossils are not millions of years old, but were buried only a few thousands of years ago, catastrophically during Noah's flood.
The discovery of soft tissues in dinosaur fossils sparked a revolution in paleontology. Secular scientists still struggle with how it can be found in bones that are supposed to be so old. Critics say that creation scientists are blinded by their religion, but maybe it's the other way around. In Ephesians 4:17-18, the Bible says, "You should not walk as the unbelievers walk, in the futility of their mind, having their understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God, because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart." Could it be that evolutionists don't want to let God in the conversation? That they refuse to allow a divine foot in the door, as biologist Richard C. Lewontin said? Are they worried that it might start, well, a flood? Can you imagine what would happen to 150 years of evolutionary theory if scientists took a second look at the biblical perspective? Bible scoffers should be worried. As we've seen over and over again, science confirms the accuracy of the Bible.
Part of this evolutionary story asserts that dinosaurs evolved into birds, but there are indications in the fossils that this story doesn't add up.
Based on his uniformitarian assumptions, he would assume that canyon required many years to form, but instead it was formed in a single day.
This is a great bit of evidence that points towards a young Earth, that these fossils are not millions of years old, but were buried only a few thousands of years ago, catastrophically during Noah's flood.
We see flood sediments pushed way up into these mountains. Tremendous upheaval was going on in the earth.
As a matter of fact, when we looked at the fossil record, we find that dinosaurs have always been dinosaurs.
So what you're looking at are layers of rock that correspond to pages in a book. Read each page, starting at the bottom, moving to the top. You're reading through time, reading about the history of the Earth through time. Unlike books, not all the pages in this book of the Earth are there.
We can use the truth about dinosaurs to show people that the Bible really is true from the very beginning. Dinosaurs are a wonderful and exciting way to do that.
There's more fun to be had as we go out and crack some more rocks and find some more fossils.
So we began this series talking about dinosaurs and what the fossil record tells us about these fascinating creatures. We described the fossil record as a book with missing pages. We can learn from it, but there are still mysteries to be uncovered. Where can we go? We have a book we can go to for answers. And unlike the fossil record, it's not missing any pages. The record is complete, and every word is true. As the Bible says in Psalm 119, 160, the entirety of your word is truth, and every one of your righteous judgments endures forever. We can trust God's word in matters of faith, matters of history, matters of science. We can understand how science uncovers the truth about dinosaurs and confirms the accuracy of the Bible. In Colossians 1:16, the Bible tells us, "For by him all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible. All things were created through him and for him." We can trust the Bible from beginning to end because it was written by the very one who created the dinosaurs, the planet they roamed, and the humans who walked the earth at the very same time. The more we learn about this book and the truths that it reveals, the more we see the glory and majesty of the Creator who was there at the very beginning. Many strange creatures have walked this world of ours. Some have left it forever. Why did the great dinosaurs vanish? Was it a mass extinction? Were they wiped out by an asteroid? Or was it something else? Can science tell us what happened to them? Will we find our answers in the Bible? In this series, we'll look to both science and the Bible to help bring dinosaurs back to life, to find some answers to the many questions they have left us. Uncovering the truth about dinosaurs.